What's going on, everybody? Welcome to the Pro Football Focus Daily Fantasy Hour here on Roto Grinders. I, of course, am Britt Devine, joined by my two Pro Football Focus cohorts, Brandon Marion Lee and Mike Tagliere. Brandon, we're in kind of a dynasty league together, and no shame to Mike, but me and you are kind of beating everybody else in this league. We've got a big showdown this week, so good luck. I think you're going to need it.
I think you're going to need it, but I'm going to check my lineup right now as we speak. But, it's one of those like huge, unruly dynasty leagues with, 36 positions?
It was ridiculous. After the first 10 rounds, I'm like, who are these guys I'm picking right now?
I mean, I just sit there going, is this person ever, I've got like Benny Fowler still there because there's just no one better. I just, how sad is that? But it happens. I lost Eric Decker this week though. So that's,
Easy win for me. Easy win.
Yeah. But I still got Crabtree, Fitzgerald, Michael Floyd, which Beasley, but it's my running backs because I have Bell and Murray and LeGarrette Blount.
So you lucked out in the draft is what you're saying.
I'm a genius.
What's going on, Mike? We got a lot to get to here. A very fun week of football here. I think it's going to be pretty diverse. The sites did a good job pricing everybody this week.
They did.
I don't think there's a ton of chalk. There's a couple players I really like, but it's going to be a really fun DFS week.
Hell yeah, it is, man. Like, this is one of my favorite times of the week to sit down with you two and talk football. I look forward to it. And this week in DFS, I talked about it already, that I think this is the week in DFS where winners are made, like where your research actually pays off. Because what I did on Tuesday, every Tuesday, I always sit down, I go through and I just like kind of randomly select the lineup just to see how I like things, the way they look. And I hated it. It looked ugly. But as the week's gone on, I've done more and more research to the point where I've actually found lineups that I'm starting to love. And I think it's a testament to how much time you put into it. And I think the people that study and listen to podcasts just like this one are the ones that are actually going to be winners, this week.
Yeah, I probably take in, 40 hours of podcast during the week. Always use 1.5x speed. You get through more content quicker that way.
Yes.
I'm just constantly taking in content. I'm reading articles on Pro Football Focus. I got the Pro Football Focus Fantasy Slant. I listened to that. So I've already listened to you guys a couple times this week. You just don't know that already. But there's so much information out there. You can just absorb it all. And I do that when I'm at the gym. While I'm cooking food, I'll have something playing. While I'm making lineups, I'll have podcasts going. There's just so much information out there. And if you listen to the right people, you can really put yourself in a very nice advantage there. So make sure to always do that, guys. Let's get started here. What we do here first, we'll talk about the Thursday and Sunday games because it's Thursday night and you can only get access to those basically tonight unless you're playing some of the smaller slates. So, Mike, let's start off with you with the Chargers here. They're at home, but they're against the Broncos, and the Broncos kind of own Phillip Rivers basically for the past 6 years. Is there anyone on the Chargers here you can maybe make a case for Melvin Gordon? His prices kind of dropped on DraftKings this week due to the tough matchup. Other than that, I'm staying away. I don't really take too many people against the Broncos.
Yeah, no, I'm glad you mentioned it though. That DraftKings, like this week, it seemed like they adjust their prices, like their algorithm may have changed or something because the prices have changed an awful lot. They're almost tempting people to play Phillip Rivers this week, but my advice would be to stay away from all of them. This is a week where you want to pay up at running back, and Melvin Gordon. I mean, I know that Denver has been gouged a little bit against the run, but this is a week where I don't mess around. I think on a short week, Melvin Gordon hasn't been any better than he was last year. His yards per carry is down. He's breaking a tackle every 8 carries instead of every 6 carries like he did last year. The touchdowns can change a perspective on a player. There has been not one wide receiver that's totaled more than 91 yards against the Broncos. Actually, as a matter of fact, if you take away Kelvin Benjamin in week 1, there's been no wide receiver that's top 7 fantasy points against them. So, yeah, no, there's not really anybody that I would get excited to play. I mean, if you're looking for a halfway decent one, I guess you could talk about Hunter Henry, although I'm not really excited about it.
What about the Broncos D here? I think they're in play a little bit. Brandon, you've got the Broncos here. There's a lot to like here. You've got C.J. Anderson, who I think is finally going to get back into his ways here. Even though Devin Booker's kind of been cutting into his touches a little bit, I think he emerges again with a workhorse role. You've got Simeon at quarterback looking like he's going to go. He was pretty good the last time he played. He's got 2 solid receivers. You got Virgil Green back too. It looks like the Broncos starting to get healthy here, and you really can't go wrong picking on the Chargers.
Yeah, the last time Simeon played, he threw for 312 yards and 4 touchdowns. Now, sure, that was on the road against Tampa Bay, and Tampa Bay is a very, very good matchup. But this is also a really good matchup. They lost cornerback Jason Verrett for the season. Brandon Flowers is out as well right now. It looks like Steve Williams, which, by the way, is my father's name, which is just, it makes me laugh every time. My dad played safety though, but so he's going to be playing instead, and right now he's been targeted on a whopping 30% of his routes covered this season. So it's going to be a really interesting day for both Demaryius Thomas and Emmanuel Sanders. However, I did want to point out that Sanders has 51 targets to Thomas's 34 on the season. That's quite a difference. Now, Thomas has 8 more yards, but if you're playing full point PPR, aka DraftKings, then that's something to take note of moving into this. And he's cheaper. He's not much cheaper anymore, but he is cheaper. As we said, DraftKings has really started to smarten up. It was really hard to write the bargains article this week. I literally was like, what? No one. There's no one here. No one that I love, at least. I was like, oh, and there was no Sammy Coates to really kind of pump me up this week. So sorry, but hey, got to do what you got to do. I'm also going to start CJ Anderson. Now, here's the deal. I know that his numbers have been down, but it's not CJ Anderson, and I'm not buying into this Devontae Booker conversation. Really, it's the fact that Donald Stevenson's been out and Virgil Green, and those are 2 of the best blockers on the team for the run game. They're both back this week, so I like that as well. So yeah, I mean, I'm starting a lot of people, and then of course, in my opinion, the Denver defense is always in play. But certainly, the Chargers are an undisciplined team with a ton of turnovers. Yeah, of course, absolutely, but you got to pay up. Got to pay up.
The Chargers are those bad news bears. That was hilarious to see Phillip Rivers mouth that on the sideline last week, and it's kind of true right now. They just find ways to lose games in the most ridiculous ways here. Let's go to Monday night, Mike. You've got the Cardinals, and I love the Arizona Cardinals this week. Brandon just mentioned Sammy Coates. Well, this week, Sammy Coates, to me, it's John Brown. I'm going all in on John Brown. He's on my FanDuel cash team right now for Thursday lock. I absolutely love him. He's Sammy Coates, but he can actually hold onto the ball. What a concept for a receiver. You've got Carson Palmer at a reduced price on DraftKings. I love that price tag at $6,000. That's a bargain. Larry Fitzgerald looks like a very, very safe play. These Jets are horrible against the pass here. I'm kind of skipping over David Johnson just a little bit. He's not going to be playing the slot like Le'Veon Bell was last week, racking up all those receptions. It's Fitzgerald and it's John Brown. It's no Malcolm Floyd, or it's no Floyd. He's basically the wide receiver 4 now. The other Brown's actually kind of creeping up there.
Well, you heard my podcast where I remarked about him.
I'm excited because I'm actually going to get to see this game in person. I am going to be at the game. Now,
hey.
the person that I want to talk about, though, is Carson Palmer. You mentioned that John Brown is last week's Sammy Coates. Well, Carson Palmer is this week's Ben Roethlisberger. And the best part about it is that he's going to be so criminally under-owned because of the way he's played this year. But this match was almost tailor-made for him. You're looking at a Jets defense that has allowed 9.24 yards per attempt on the year. The next closest is the Raiders, who have been pretty awful in their own right. And they're still almost half of a yard behind the Jets. On top of that, it's not just that, but Carson Palmer averages 11.5 yards. His depth of target is 11.5 yards down the field. The next closest is 10.6 yards. Like, he chucks the ball downfield. And, part of that is it can be a disaster sometimes. But in this matchup, you want every single player you can from the Cardinals. David Johnson is someone I'm fading in DFS. I wouldn't play him this week. There's plenty of other options at the top of the board that I'd much rather play. But Carson Palmer, Fitz, John Brown, it wouldn't surprise me if Michael Floyd got in on this too. But yeah, Carson Palmer, if you play Carson Palmer naked, I'm fine with that too.
Brandon, you've got the Jets here, which kind of stinks for you because you're not going to get much face time here, because I don't really see how you play any of these guys going into Arizona. It just doesn't look like a good spot. You're going to get shadow coverage by Patrick Peterson on Brandon Marshall, most likely. Anunwa's still going to have a tough time. The run game is going to be a tough time. Fitz Tragic is probably going to throw a couple of interceptions here.
It's tragic.
Yeah, I got that from Grant here at Roto Grinders. That was a good one. But I don't really know what you can find here in these Jets here for me.
No, there's not really much to find. My apologies. I think this is one of those weeks where you say, yeah, this primetime game thing is kind of not for me. I don't want to, or you just say, yeah, I'm going all in on the chalk. I'm doing Arizona, I'm doing Denver, and I'm just leaving it at that. So, but yeah, no, I don't see a whole lot of silver linings here. And again, I don't know how much more time we have to spend on it other than to say, with Decker being on IR, if you're one of those people that wants to like throw a really, really random dart and you've decided that you just want to throw all caution to the wind, Robbie Anderson will be on the field.
Going
That's all I'm going to say about that.
Digging deep because there's literally nothing to find for me on the Jets this week.
Yeah. But he will be playing football.
Yes,
he's been playing a lot of snaps, but only I think has two.
If John Kuhn can get 3 touchdowns, maybe Robbie Anderson can get a couple of catches, right?
There you go.
Let's go to quarterback. How we do this, guys, if you're new here, is each Brandon and Mike, they have a stud, a value, and a dud at each position. And we'll just kind of go through. If we have time, I'll mix in a couple of my players too. And Mike, let's start with you. Your stud quarterback of the week. I noticed this. Someone I think is going to go pretty low owned because we have this game in New Orleans with Drew Brees and Cam Newton playing, and I think a lot of the ownership's going to go there. And you love yourself some Russell Wilson this week, so explain why you shouldn't be overlooking him.
I do. The Falcons just came off an emotional win in Denver against the Broncos. From what I've heard, they didn't travel back home. They stayed on the road instead of traveling back and forth, which, I mean, I suppose it's good for them. It's good for Russell Wilson, though, because we need the Falcons to put up some sort of points because Russell Wilson's going to demolish this defense. While most teams, they want their bye later in the year because they just want it when they need it, the Seahawks could not have had it at a better time. You're looking at Russell Wilson, who was on 2 bum legs. Although, before the bye week, he did look very good against the Jets, but then again, who hasn't? We're talking about Tyler Lockett was dealing with a PCL injury. Jimmy Graham could use, he could use as much time as possible to rehab that knee, even though he's looked fantastic. So, this is a Falcons team that doesn't get much pressure on the quarterback. They averages 2 sacks per game. That's never going to get it done against Russell Wilson, especially one that, is going to have his legs under him again. The Falcons have allowed 281 passing yards in 4 of their games to go along with 3 or more touchdowns in 4 games. So this matchup at home coming off the bye week for Russell Wilson is fantastic. The Falcons have actually been pretty decent against the run too. I think holding opponents to around 3.5 yards per carry. So Russell Wilson, fantastic play. And he doesn't cost you as much as Drew Brees does.
Yeah, I like Russell Wilson. It's really tough. You get a really nice discount on Brees on FanDuel. He's just $8,500 over there.
Yeah.
DraftKings, he's kind of expensive. But I really like Brees. Wilson makes an excellent swerve in tournaments this week. He's got a bunch of healthy targets now, too. Brandon, you've got, no surprise here, Drew Brees is a stud. He's my guy. He's the guy I think I'm probably going to use on my cash games basically everywhere this week. You've got some nice stats, too. But since 2011, I use the RotoViz Splits app. Without any 300-yard bonuses in, at home, 33 fantasy points per game at home since 2011. Absolutely insane. A bad Carolina defense that they just lost another cornerback today that's not going to play. An absolutely terrific matchup, and I'm about to go all in on it.
Yeah, absolutely. You should. Just even this year, his away games, 14.52 points, 13.84, no bonuses. And then he scored 31.42 and 26.94 at home, no bonuses. This year, it's the same. I know that he doesn't like this narrative. I know he gets very touchy about it in press conferences, but it's just true. Yeah. It's just true. It is 100% true. And that's why I brought him up. Although I will say, because I don't want to bore everybody, I think also Ben Roethlisberger is a sneaky play this week. I think people think that they're not going to throw the ball. I'm going to talk about that with Antonio Brown. But as we have seen, they are all about running up the score against people. So I think that they're going to decimate Miami, and I don't think they'll have as high of ownership.
The Carolina defense, too, you've got a note in here on Matt Ryan. I did some writing about Drew Brees and the Saints this week, and Matt Ryan's the best quarterback they faced. The rest have been pretty easy matchups for a defense, and they've still given up a ton of fantasy points. So Drew Brees just my pure lock of the week. I absolutely love that call.
Mm-hmm.
Alex Smith. Oh, wait, that's you. I got to go back up to Mike here. So I guess I ruined the surprise for your value player. So, Mike, you've got Carson.
Really a surprise. I'm sure everyone's talking about Alex Smith.
Mike, you've got Carson Palmer. We've already talked a little bit how much we love this. It's a little tougher because you can't play him on the main Sunday slate on a lot of sites here. But if you're playing the Thursday slate on DraftKings or on FanDuel and you're looking for a quarterback to lock in there to save some cap space, I mean, 6,000 on DraftKings for Carson Palmer. The 300-yard bonus is probably going to be there. The deep ball is going to be there. There's no Revis. I don't even know if that's a downgrade. They're just so bad in the secondary there. I love your call.
They really are. Yeah, I don't need to talk about too much. I know I raved about Carson Palmer and all that. It's just, I mean, if you don't play Thursday slate, I think this is one to play it just to get some exposure to Carson Palmer. Just to add on to Brandon's Drew Brees pick, it seems like James Bradbury, their starting corner that, had been doing pretty well. He's going to be out for this game, it seems like. So you're talking about backup corners against Drew Brees at home. That's not fair.
Yeah, that's game over. Let's go to Alex Smith for you. I already let the cat out of the bag here. It's always Alex Smith is not someone I like to play. Especially you get Jamal Charles coming back here, but the matchup is absolutely golden. The best he's going to have all year against Oakland. Oakland's probably going to put some points up. You got to think the Chiefs are going to be able to put some points up. Andy Reid off by 15-2. That sounds pretty good here. So to explain to me, convince me to use Alex Smith this week.
Well, he did throw for 363 yards and 2 touchdowns and scored another touchdown on his feet in week 1 against San Diego, another not so great defense. So you're hoping that he's one of those guys that plays really well in good matchups. And this is a great matchup. Oakland gives up an average of 338 yards and 2.4 passing touchdowns per game. That's insane. That's the average. What? So I can't tell you. And Alex Smith is so incredibly cheap. I wrote about him in my DFS bargains article that I write every single week on Pro Football Focus. The guy is the 28th priced quarterback on FanDuel, 21st on DraftKings, and he is only the 7th though on Yahoo. It's like Yahoo got it together. It was like, oh, it's Oakland. We're gonna.
Everyone's expensive on Yahoo. It doesn't even matter.
It doesn't even matter. It's so crazy. But other than that, on FanDuel and DraftKings, I just cannot imagine him not ending up this week as a top 10 guy. And he's not even priced close to that.
I'm still 10. I think I'm going to use him in a couple of tournament lineups on that FanDuel week 2 Survivor. I got all 50 of my teams through, so I got to make 50 tournament lineups. I'm going to start tonight. I'm going to mix in a couple Alex Smith with Travis Kelce, Alex Smith with Jeremy Maclin. I'll get a little bit of exposure that way. I'm still having trouble putting them in my cash games, especially with Drew Brees at home in a great matchup. That looks like such a lock, but I get where you're going with.
But I think an Alex Smith with Jamal Charles is an unconventional stack that you should consider as well, based on the short passes that I think he'll do.
I have one better for you guys: Chris Conley and Alex Smith.
Yeah, Conley. This is the one.
He's
this
free.
Is the one Alex Conley, the one Conley week. Your dud. Matt Ryan, I get this completely. Going into Seattle, very tough place to play. He still didn't really do too much against Denver. I just don't see any way we roster Matt Ryan this week.
Yeah, there's not a chance. They'll take away Julio Jones. It seems like Richard Sherman's going to cover him. But on top of that, it's not just that. The Seattle Seahawks at home, it doesn't matter who they're playing against. They've allowed 8 passing touchdowns in their last 10 home games. So that's talking about going back to the start of last year. They've allowed 8 passing touchdowns at home. Stay away from Matt Ryan. It's just not a week. There's plenty of other options, as we talked about. Alex Smith is a cheaper one. You can play Carson Palmer. There's so many other options you'd rather play than Matt Ryan this week.
Brandon, you're about to break the hearts of T.Y. Hilton owners everywhere, because this Texans pass defense is really good and they can be beat on the ground. You're going to see Mike talk about that in a little bit here, I think here. Your dud, Andrew Luck. This offensive line is absolutely horrific right now, which is another reason I'm off T.Y. Hilton in most of my lineups right now, because I just don't really see a lot of passing being done here against this Houston defense that's been really good all year. So explain in depth why you hate Andrew Luck.
Well, the good news is that Houston has yet to face an elite quarterback. So there is that argument, right, that the numbers are a little bit inflated. They've only faced Cutler, Smith, Brissett, Mariota, and Bradford. No one's shaking in their booties when I say those names out loud. Not surprisingly, Sam Bradford had the most points, but it was only 18, okay? Fine. Luck is very up and down, though, so far this season. His numbers have been going in the right direction as of late, but so have his matchups. So that wasn't surprising. We knew that was going to happen. He's on the road. His shoulder doesn't bother me as much, but that offensive line is terrible. And even without J.J. Watt, I still think this will be just an okay game for Luck, because, listen, Houston has given up a league low 195 passing yards per game. That's it. And I think he'll go over 200, but I don't think he'll even come close to a 300-yard bonus. And I just think he's priced where you want that for the upside, and he's not going to have it.
Yeah, I'm in agreement, a little off of T.Y. Hilton as well because of that right now. So let's move to running back Mike. First off, neither one of you have Le'Veon Bell. So let's just get Le'Veon Bell out of the way. The
Clearly.
stone cold lock of the week. So I'm glad you guys didn't put him in here. I think I'm 100% in all my cash games, and I might even click. We have the lineup builder here on Roto Grinders, the lock button for all my tournaments, and basically put him in all my teams. Just a stone cold lock for me. But another guy I'm considering to hit that same button on, Mike, LaShawn McCoy, going up against Chip Kelly. You got a revenge game. You get all the touches. You get a team that likes to run as a big home favorite. All the correlations are there. I love this play, and he's someone I'm going to be using heavily this week.
Yep, you said it, the narrative alert. A lot of people overlook that. They don't even think about that. LaShawn McCoy hasn't, gotten to the end zone recently, and it just seems like it's weird how things have lined up. But this is a case where LaShawn McCoy is going to stick it to Chip Kelly. He doesn't like him. That's not like it's hidden information or anything like that. But you don't even need the narrative in this week to talk about LaShawn McCoy and why he's a fantastic play. He's totaled at least 107 yards in his last 3 games. The 49ers have allowed 4 straight running backs to reach the 100-yard bonus on the ground. DeForest Buckner, I don't know if he's going to play, but, last week was the first one that we saw the 49ers without Navarro Bowman. Navarro Bowman was a big centerpiece to that defense, and losing him hurts even more. They weren't good with Bowman. You take him out of the middle, it's just going to make him even worse. LaShawn McCoy, there is really no reason that you should even think about fading him. The reason I didn't put Le'Veon Bell here is because I think a lot of people know about Bell, but me personally, you're getting McCoy a little bit cheaper, and I think you're getting just as much as a performance out of LaShawn McCoy. So to pair them both, I'm fine with that. Obviously pay for Alex Smith and then, stack those 2 running backs together and reap the points.
Pairing them both, that's something I might be doing quite a bit this week. Not going to lie. Let's go, Brandon. DeMarco Murray, you're a stud. The only problem with DeMarco Murray is he's pretty expensive. I can get Le'Veon Bell relatively close there. I think I'm always going to pick Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Bell's not only the top running back, but he's like a top 20 receiver as well, kind of all rolled into one right now. So it's really tough to ignore that. But I love DeMarco Murray this week. Cleveland's absolutely horrific. Murray's getting all the touches. It's a match made in heaven. I'm not going to argue against you here.
No, and I think that if you're someone that doesn't like to have 100% exposure to anyone, just in case someone tears an ACL, to me, you just rotate between DeMarco Murray and Le'Veon Bell. I think that DeMarco Murray, I just want to talk about how fantastic he's been this season. But on top of that, he's facing Cleveland. This gives up an average of 114 rushing yards per game and 6 total touchdowns so far on the season. We haven't even played 5 games. So I think he's definitely a lock for 100 plus yards and at least a touchdown. And he's just killing it this year. I think that he's someone that I'm going to play and think that, maybe this will be an Antonio Brown, Jesse James in the end zone type of week. And maybe actually DeMarco Murray will just edge it out. So just in case, I just want to mix it up, which is why I chose DeMarco Murray over Le'Veon Bell, because I feel like I'm picking one of those 2 very expensive players. I feel confident, that's the word, in both.
And you could see some short fields too. The Browns lost a key offensive lineman. Kessler's hurt a little bit too. It's just like DeMarco Murray's going to run wild this week, in my opinion. Your value play, Mike, this is an interesting one. There's the narrative, old man value. You've got Frank Gore in here who just quietly chugs along and does his thing every week. Never a threat for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns. But with this price, you don't really need that. And it's a pretty nice matchup here. I already mentioned with the dud that you can't really pass on the Texans so far this year, but you can run on them. So give me some stats here.
You could run on them. Since losing J.J. Watt, this defense is struggling. A lot of people will point to the fact that Jerick McKinnon couldn't get it done last week, but that doesn't mean that Matt Asiata didn't. You look at the last 3 games without J.J. Watt in Houston, they've allowed Matt Asiata 19.1 PPR points, 25.9 to DeMarco Murray, 22.5 to LeGarrette Blount. It's a defense that you're able to pound the ball over and over and over again. In the last 3 games, 27 carries at minimum for the opponents. We know that Frank Gore sees roughly 80% of the carries for this team. It's a fantastic matchup. They have not this year held a opposing running back to less than 10.5 fantasy points. And that's in standard leagues. If you go up to PPR, minimum 12.5 fantasy points. So it's a fantastic matchup for any running back, especially one like Frank Gore, who's guaranteed a lot of work. I know he hasn't reached 100 yards and I'm not even saying that that's going to happen in this game, but I do see him getting in the end zone, and you're probably looking at another 70 to 80-yard game with a touchdown.
Yeah, just for value, if he's kind of the last guy into your lineup or maybe one of the last pieces, I think he makes quite a bit of sense. You made a pretty good case for him here. Brandon, your value play, Jamal Charles, and on DraftKings, he's 5,100. I need some serious coach speak, though, by the time Sunday morning rolls around to get behind this here, because I just don't know what's going to happen here. They say maybe they're going to ease him back in, even though the training wheels are off. I need Andy Reid to come out and say, you know what, Jamal Charles, he's looking good. We're going to give him 15 touches this week, and then I'll get behind it. But this one's a little iffy for me, so sell me.
Well, right now, I'm going to say that the Raiders give up 4.9 yards per carry to opposing running backs. And Jamal Charles has never averaged less than 5 yards per carry in any of his his glorious years in the National Football League. They said that he feels 110%. They eased him in week 4, and they barely had him out there. The only reason he was out there in week 4, frankly, was because Jarkandrick West was out. I mean, they didn't want to have him out there. But frankly, Spencer Ware has fumbled in each of the last 3 games. If they can get the ball in Jamal Charles's hand instead, I don't know why they wouldn't. They're in a division where they have to win this divisional matchup. This is a borderline make or break game for them. The Raiders and the Broncos are not going to all of a sudden crumble into nothingness. If they have any shot at the playoffs, they have to win this game. So to me, that's Jamal Charles. I don't know why they wouldn't do that. Now, I'm not saying that Spencer Ware is a bad football player. I'm not saying that he won't play a little bit. They need to keep Jamal Charles fresh. But Jamal Charles has never been a volume guy. He's always been efficient. So that's what he's going to do again. And I feel great about him against the Raiders.
For me, I'm going to chime in on this real quick. Just so, Brandon, you're saying it's a must-win game, and for me, I actually think Spencer Ware might be the better option for in a must-win game. Like, you look at when Charles went down last year, they were a better team without Jamal Charles. Spencer, they won. I think it was 11 straight games. Spencer Ware has averaged close to 7.5 yards per touch this year. I know he's fumbled a couple times. That's going to happen, and I'm not going to put too much into that, but Jamal Charles, a guy that literally he's not, I mean, you could say he's fresh, but at the same time, he's coming off an ACL surgery that we're now in week 6, and there's a reason he hasn't touched the ball. He came along very slowly. I think, honestly, I'm very hesitant on playing Jamal Charles this week. I mean, in a GPP, sure, because he might not be highly owned in something like DraftKings, but I don't necessarily think that, he's a lock to get the touches. I actually think that Spencer Ware might be the better play this week.
Yeah, I need some coach speak by Sunday morning to roll.
Andy Reid is a conservative coach. If this was some flashy new agey coach, maybe. But do you want to know what he hates? People that have ball security issues. There's nothing he hates more. If he has Jamal Charles has never fumbled more than 3 times in a season in his entire career. He's only fumbled 3 total times in 3 of his 8 seasons. That's it. He's either fumbled 2 or less every other season. I think that this is a bigger issue than we think. Also, he's the face of the franchise. Mm-hmm. This is not just some player. It's Jamal Charles. If he's 110%, which they keep saying, I mean, they said they were going to be slow with him, that they weren't going to rush him out there. But I just think if it is a must win, I don't think that the Chiefs have any question as to who they trust more. Now, they adjusted when Jamal Charles went out. They had to, and they played great football, and their defense was fantastic. And they did a great job, and they got into the playoffs. It was incredibly impressive. But they adjusted because they knew they wouldn't get him back. It was a season-ending injury. It wasn't like they became better. It wasn't like a Jordan Howard, Jeremy Langford situation where they literally became better, and we have to make a choice now. It was like, well, we don't have a choice. We need to play up to our current circumstance. So, I mean, I hear you, maybe it's risky, but he's right now on DraftKings tied for the 19th highest in price. He's barely even a top 20 priced guy.
Yeah, I just think more tournament than cash, like 100%. I just think Spencer Ware, I still think the guy's underrated. He's been playing such good football, and he didn't fumble at all last year. So I'm not going to put too much stock into it. I don't think he has a fumbling problem per se. I think it's just wrong place, wrong time. But yeah, I mean, I think Britt was getting to it. I think it's better to a wait and see approach in that one though.
Got to see if I get something from Andy Reid that says, hey, I'm going to give him 15 touches on Sunday morning. That price on DraftKings is very tempting. Other than that, I think I'm going to stay away. Mike, let's move on. Ezekiel Elliott, you've got here as your dud. A little surprising. I got to be honest, I'm not too concerned about this Packers allowing only 2.2 yards per carry. I've talked to the Siege here, and their best running back they faced has been Theo Riddick. So he's got this big offensive line.
That depends on who you ask.
I'm a little worried about game script maybe getting out of the way here, but I kind of like Elliott for GPPs this week. I'm not going to lie.
A lot of people are going to be playing Ezekiel Elliott. I want to get that straight because
I don't think anybody's going to be playing him because you've got Bell, McCoy, Murray. Nobody's going to be playing him.
Sharks. I don't think Sharks are going to be playing him, but I do think the general public plays a lot of Ezekiel Elliott. I think he's higher owned than people think. And the reason is because of what you just said. There's a lot of people talking about the competition against Green Bay hasn't been great. Theo Riddick may be the worst running back they played. TJ Yeldon's better than Theo Riddick. So is Adrian Peterson. But
lies. You're spitting lies.
Riddick is
Hold
not
on,
a good.
I just went.
So I broke it down and I looked at the running backs that have played against the Packers, and the starters actually only average 1.56 yards per carry. I looked at those same running backs against every other team that they've played. In those games, they averaged almost 2.5 more yards per carry. So it's not just the running back. Have they played the best competition? No. But am I sitting here going to say that you should pay up for Ezekiel Elliott? No, because there's plenty of other options. We've talked about them. Lamar Miller is a better option. LaShawn McCoy is a better option. Le'Veon Bell, and they all cost in that same tier. There is no way you're going to convince me to play Ezekiel Elliott this week.
Brandon, your dud is going to break a lot of people's hearts this week, and you're going to have to do some serious convincing here. You've got Jordan Howard as your dud of the week here, and I think he's going to be one of the top 7 owned running backs this week.
That's why he's on my dud.
Taking over. So I'm not even going to give my 2 cents. I want you to sell me, and then I'm going to rebut you.
He's priced as a top 10 running back this week.
Yeah, because he is.
Yeah. I loved him. He was one of my plays every week following up to this. Literally, I have been into this DFS Jordan Howard. I rode that pony. It's fantastic. It's time to get off the pony. It's a top 10 priced guy. You need to spend that money elsewhere. The reason why is that I don't think he'll be bad, but I don't think that he has his ceiling like he has in the previous weeks where he had great matchups, which, by the way, is fine. He played against Detroit. He played against Indianapolis. I felt great about that. This week, he goes up against the Jags, and they've only allowed 2 rushing touchdowns all season to opposing running backs and no receiving touchdowns whatsoever. Melvin Gordon managed to rush over 100 yards in week 2, but no one else has mustered over 68 yards. It's been just kind of this pitter patter. And if you're not going to get over 100 yards, and if you're not necessarily going to score a touchdown, or let's put it this way, he may do one or the other, but it's highly unlikely he's going to do both. I just think that this is a tough road. I don't think that he has the type of potential for where he is priced. I think he's great. I think he'll get double-digit points. But do I think that he has a 20-plus point ceiling this week? No, I don't see the path to that based off of the matchup. And, there are just other ways to beat the Jags. Usually you have to score points too. You got to throw the ball. So I think this is a really weird matchup for him. And there's so many good running backs with so many good matchups. I'd rather get someone that's a little bit cheaper and spend my money instead on Le'Veon Bell, DeMarco Murray, LaShawn McCoy, the people we've already discussed.
All right, Mike, let's settle the tie here. What side are you on? I'm looking at this Football Outsiders DVOA against the run, and I see the Jags sitting there with a 29th ranking. I'm licking my chops here, so you break the tie for me.
Yeah, I'm with you, Britt.
High five.
So wait, there's only 2 running backs that have seen 16 or more carries against them. That's Melvin Gordon and Frank Gore. Those 2 are not known as like the yards per carry gods. They're not guys that you like literally need to get in your lineups every week. And both of those guys actually totaled more than 20 PPR points. So yeah, Jordan Howard, I don't know if I'm going to own him in many lines because if I'm paying up, I'm going to spend for, Le'Veon Bell, Lamar Miller, or
go into your advanced statistics, Mike, and look at those broken tackles.
Oh no, he's so good.
He's amazing. Of course.
He's been so good.
I'm just saying there are so many good people, and he's top 10 priced now. I just think he is not. I think it would be a stretch based off of what I think the game plan is going to look like with the Chicago Bears, that he's going to score over 20 points for your DFS lineup.
Like, I'm going to use LaShawn McCoy and DeMarco Murray and some of those guys over him, but I still think he is plenty viable and just
that's where I'm at. I probably won't recommend too much because I'd rather have other guys, but I still think he's a fantastic play.
Well, I think he's a fantasy player, but that's what I'm saying. Like, that's why he's a dud, because he will not play the same amount, and you can't fit him into your lineups right now. Do you have a lineup where you have both Jordan Howard, whose price is a top 10 guy, and Le'Veon Bell and DeMarco Murray?
You can't do it. That happen. You got Tavon Austin, Cameron Meredith. There's a bunch of cheap guys out there this week at receiver.
You want Tavon Austin in your lineup so you can get Jordan Howard in there.
Well, that would be a reason, but you can do it. I kind of like Tavon Austin.
I like Tavon this week too.
All right. This is the point of the show, guys, where we do a little screen share. We tell you about all the fun stuff over at Pro Football Focus. Mike, I'm going to screen share here your Locks of the Week article. I've got Lamar Miller pulled up here. So let's talk a little bit about Lamar Miller here for the guys. They can see your thoughts behind it. This is kind of behind the paywall over at Pro Football Focus, so you can't really get this, and then you buy into their premium content. We've talked about all the good running backs available here. And Lamar Miller's right there. He just hasn't gotten the end zone, and I think he's in store for a big week. I like the call here.
Yeah, he is. Yeah, he is right there. And the fact that he's going to be so low owned, I think he's a fantastic play because there are other running backs in this area that are going to be highly owned. So even dipping down a little bit to get Lamar Miller is a good play because he's getting back his left tackle, Dwayne Brown. I know he came back last week, but he played, I think, 33% of the snaps. So they were getting his feet wet. They essentially gave Lamar Miller a bye week against the Vikings last week. They realized that they weren't going to win that game very, very early on. It was a blowout from the get-go. That's why Asiata played a lot. And, there was a lot of things going on in that game. But the Colts, that's a different story. This is a divisional game. They know it's big. It's a home game. This is a defense that has probably one of the oldest linebacking cores in all of football. They've allowed at least 15.7 PPR points to every single starting running back, which is part of the reason I love Jordan Howard last week is like he was in every single lineup Jordan Howard needed to be played. And Lamar Miller is similar to that. And like I said, you add in the fact that the low ownership is going to be there, and I just think it's a fantastic play.
Yeah, I like that quite a bit. Brandon, I've got your DFS bargains of the week here. This is the article you write over here. So pick a player you want to talk about, and I'll bring it up on the screen here for everybody.
Oh, well, I'm going to talk about him a little bit later, but, at the end of the article, some guy was like, what about, Brian Hoyer and Cameron Murray? That's crazy. But look at how low they're priced. 3 back-to-back games for Brian Hoyer of over 300 yards. And the Jaguars, are actually giving up quite a few points to opposing quarterbacks, regardless of exactly how you feel about them personally, since we have Brian Hoyer right here. And,
I'm trying to bring up the rest of it, but I don't know what's going on.
It's okay.
Stuck out of the paywall somehow.
It's okay. It's good. So now you have to pay.
Well, I do.
And, it just is what it is. John Fox has remained coy about all of this, but I think this is just keeping Hoyer motivated. I don't think this is actually Cutler coming back in, but hey, you know what? We'll see. But if Cutler remains, I think that both of them are going to outperform at least their prices, especially, look at FanDuel. He's the 24th guy right now. 3 back-to-back 300-yard games.
What's he got to do to get some respect here? I love Hoyer as a cheap option once again.
I just think that if you're putting together creative lineups, he's probably the number one quarterback that I'm looking at this week because I also think he will barely be owned.
All right, and I'm going to close this out here. This is kind of my favorite thing to do here is the wide receiver cornerback chart. And one of these guys at the top here, Jarvis Landry. Mike, I looked at this Sean Davis character that plays the slot for the Steelers, and his statistics might be some of the worst I've ever seen. Jarvis Landry, there might be a little bit of rain concern, so these short dink and dunk passes. You got Pittsburgh, who doesn't really give up the deep ball, but they give up a lot of stuff underneath here. Jarvis Landry has moved into almost must-play territory for me, and I'm using him on my Thursday cash team.
What's funny is I have like a spreadsheet with every game and like notes on every player and all that stuff after I do my research. And my notes, I just clicked on it to go to Jarvis Landry. It says Sean Davis is playing the slot. He has allowed 16 catches for 202 yards on 19 targets. Play Jarvis Landry. Those are my notes. That's it.
Yeah, his matchup is absolutely premier. You got a couple other guys up here, Brandon. What's your next favorite guy here? I have this sorted by advantage that takes the grade of the receiver and matches it against the grade of the quarterback. I think there's a couple plays here. Terrell Pryor, very sneaky this week against Parrish Cox. I like him in tournaments. And if Kessler gets a little banged up, maybe a couple of quarterback snaps here too. So he's someone I'm looking at in GPPs this week.
Yeah. I was a little more excited about Terrell Pryor when I thought maybe there was this glimmer of hope that Josh McCown was going to be starting. But it sounds like they're shutting that down real fast for me. But once McCown's in, I'm in. Like I am all in. I think Amari Cooper is a very interesting play this week, and Michael Crabtree. Again, I think this is an incredibly important divisional matchup. And I know that a lot of people don't think it's that big of a deal because it's the beginning of the season. But again, this division is filled with contenders. Someone has to win this game, and it's incredibly viable, or it's incredibly likely that this game is going to determine who makes the playoffs. It's insane. So I think Amari Cooper, they're just going to throw all over the place. I don't think Phillip Gaines is going to be able to catch up at all. So yeah, I think there's some really good, but I'm also into Crabtree. If you're going to see here too, DeAndre Hopkins, it looks like he's going to be covered by Vontae Davis.
Didn't the coach come out today, says he's not going to shadow him? I'm not buying that for an instant.
Hold on. You guys, Vontae Davis has not been shadowing this year. You guys should know that. Like, he hasn't been shadowing, and they've been playing worse ever since Vontae Davis came back.
That's actually what I was going to point out. So if you look here, this is why you can't just do the advantage. If you look over to the right,
yep,
you're right too. 89% of the time he's been right cornerback.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Now, if you look here at DeAndre Hopkins, he's been all over the map, right? He's been a little bit more on the left, but not that much more. So we are looking at this being probably a misnomer. They're thinking that maybe he's going to, change it up a little bit, but I highly doubt this. Again, this is why you want to read this whole chart. So I think that Will Fuller is an interesting play.
He's PvP.
He's up here actually, right? So you're like, well, what is going on here? But so always look at the whole chart, right? Look at both sides here, because it's a chart. It has its own algorithms and whatever that makes it happy, but do your deep investigation. And this, again, I think what was cool that Mike said is that this is the week where like your research is going to pay off. That's an exact moment that I wanted to point out right there.
All right, let's move on to wide receiver. We're going to pick up the pace here. Your stud, Allen Robinson, Mike. I love Allen Robinson this week. I think all the targets are going to be there. The defense is bad. The Bears struggle against number one receivers. He's off the bye, so people aren't going to be really thinking about him. And if you're spending up on running back, he's a little tough to get into your lineups this week. All those things going to keep his ownership down. And he's someone, on my 50 GPP lineups I make, I might have 25, 30% Allen Robinson.
Yeah, no, it's definitely tough to fit him in this week because you kind of have to go down at wide receiver if you're paying up for running backs. But if you are paying up, some of the top options are off the board. There's a lot of tough matchups there. But Allen Robinson, it's funny because I actually debated putting Allen Hurns in as a value because I believe they're both good plays because the Bears struggle with speed. I mean, you've seen the bonuses. They allowed Hilton, they allowed Fuller to hit the 100-point bonuses. Those are two guys that burn you down the field. The Bears don't really have a top cornerback. They just don't have that. And a lot of people would say that Allen Hurns is the guy that stretches the field. As a matter of fact, Allen Robinson is the one who sees the biggest average depth of target down the field. But I do think that there's room for both Robinson and Hurns to have a decent game here. The Bears have in 2 games, they've allowed multiple wide receivers to hit 13 PPR points. So if you're paying up at wide receiver, Allen Robinson is my pick.
Yeah, Brandon, you're paying way up here. Now, the price tag on Antonio Brown this week, it's moved up into this point where I'm kind of debating, should I use him on my cash teams? Currently, I've decided I don't think I'm going to right now. There's not enough running back value. There's quarterback value, but Drew Brees is playing, so I'm playing Drew Brees. There's just not enough running back value right now for me to be able to pay that hefty price tag on Antonio Brown. I love the matchup. I want to play him. I just don't think I can afford him this week.
Yeah, and that's completely justified. I think that one of the things that we're kind of getting into this week, right, is about strategy, which is why I personally am not playing Jordan Howard, right? I'm looking for someone that's a little bit more of a value, but I'm still probably playing Antonio Brown because Tony Lipp has been giving up the second most fantasy points per route among this week's projected starting corners. Some people are worried that this blowout is going to happen. They're going to go away from him. But the thing is that, over the last couple of blowouts, Antonio Brown's still been putting up huge numbers. So I'm not incredibly worried about that. There is, again, some reservation there, and I get it, but he has this fantastic matchup. And if you are going to pay up for any wide receiver, I still think it's Antonio Brown, and I just wanted to state my case.
Yeah, there's the Big Ben road narrative too, but if you really, really look into Big Ben over the past, year road games, he's thrown for a lot of yards, just hasn't been a lot of end zone touchdowns. I think he's still going to be all cylinders firing here. So I like Antonio Brown. If you can afford him, I'm going to have him in some tournaments, but I just don't think he's going to be able to squeeze on my cash teams this week.
I think they want to embarrass Miami.
Yeah.
Well, my buddy Evan Silva, he was on the show yesterday with Rebar, and he was saying that, for him to live up to price on DraftKings, Antonio Brown essentially has to get 100 yards and 2 touchdowns, which is just that's a lot 10 grand is like, I don't remember seeing a receiver that expensive. So I do love the play. I just don't know if you can fit him into lineups this week with the running backs you have to pay for.
But I think he'll be so low owned because of his price that there is a debate for that. And that's why I wanted to bring him up.
I hope my opponents use him because it's really going to hinder the rest of their lineup, in my opinion, this week. That's how I'm kind of approaching it. Mike, your value receiver skyrocket up my charts as soon as Trumaine Johnson was kind of ruled out this week with an ankle injury. You've got Theo Riddick hobbled. Is Justin Forsett really going to handle the workload? I don't think so for the Lions this week. It's going to be a passing game. It's a Marvin Jones game, and nobody's going to be using him.
No, Ebron looks like he's going to be out for this game as well. So, there's only so many players.
Not Golden Tate. Do not use Golden Tate.
Anquan Bolden is nicked up. Honestly, it wouldn't surprise me if he got involved. So basically the reason that you want to play Marvin Jones, he said Trumaine Johnson is going to be out for this game. LaMarcus Joyner only plays the slot, which is typically where Anquan Bolden's at. EJ Gaines and Troy Hill are the cornerbacks. They're going to be matched up with Golden Tate and Marvin Jones. These guys both are 5'11". It's little. They've allowed on 36 targets. They have allowed 25.
This stat line's crazy.
Yeah, 25 catches, 317 yards, and 3 touchdowns. Guys, what that adds up to for, if you don't want to write all that down, that adds up to 2.1 PPR points per target. So this is like a nuclear game for Marvin Jones. I'd actually probably rather play him than paying up for Antonio Brown or Allen Robinson.
I love Marvin Jones' play quite a bit this week. Brandon, your value is someone I love. He was the DFS darling last week. Cameron Meredith, he's still very cheap. He's 41 on DraftKings. I think he's 54 on FanDuel. I think he's going to make my cash teams by the time we get off the air here, and I have a couple minutes to tinker here. And you've got your stats, but I spent a lot of time. I'll give people a little look behind the incentives article here at RotoGrinders. So if you combine Kevin White and Cameron Meredith's targets this season, they'd be tied for Antonio Brown for second in the league. If you combine his yards, they'd be 13th in the league. And if you combine the receptions, they're tied with Jarvis Landry for 4th in the league here. And it's just the Cameron Meredith show. Kevin White's gone here. He's an elite option this week, and his price is still way too cheap.
The most expensive that he is on DraftKings, and he's still the 52nd priced wide receiver, you guys. He's 50th or below. I can't believe it. And the thing is, if someone's that low, they only have to get double-digit points? Max, right? Then you're like, oh, I did a great job because this guy was so cheap, right? Well, let me tell you who's already scored double-digit points against the Jaguars. Devontae Adams, Jordy Nelson, Travis Benjamin, Tyrell Williams, Steve Smith Sr., Philip Dorsett, T.Y. Hilton, and also Randall Cobb if it's the full point PPR.
So everyone.
That's multiple wide receivers almost on each of the teams. The only one that is missing from there is Baltimore because Baltimore stinks. So, I just think that there's no way that he's going to not outperform the crazy price tag. And on that note, I just also wanted to give a quick shout out to Chris Hogan because I think he'll be a little bit less chalk. I know that Adam Jones is a possible issue. And I don't know if I would use him on DraftKings based on his price because he's at 40th, but on FanDuel, he's the 56th priced, and on Yahoo, he's the 62nd priced. And again, I just do not think that's where he'll land at all. I think he will also get double-digit points.
All right. For some time concerns, guys, I'm going to give them your busts for wide receiver. Mike had Julio Jones. Very tough matchup. Richard Sherman's going to be shadowing. No thanks there. I agree with you completely. Brandon has AJ Green. What does Belichick do? He takes away the most important target. That's clearly going to be AJ Green. Probably roll coverage to him. So I'm in agreement with you there. I am not on AJ Green as well here. So Mike, let's go to tight end. And there's a lot to like at tight end. When we first started the season, man, tight end, it's going to stink. And it hasn't really played out that way. There's a lot of legitimate targets, so it's pretty important to make sure that your tight end is someone you think can actually have a good game this year. You've got Jimmy Graham. You seem to be going all in on the Seahawks in your DFS locks article. You basically said the same thing here. The Falcons stink against tight ends, and Jimmy Graham looks healthy. So give me all those stats.
Yeah, they're awful. Jimmy Graham, back-to-back 100-yard games. He looks good. He's coming off of his bye week where he'll take any rest he can on that knee. But if you look at before the Broncos last week, and by the way, the Broncos were supposed to have Virgil Green back. Then he was like a game time decision, came down, he didn't play. And backup tight ends. So even including the 0 from the Broncos tight ends, the Falcons have allowed the second most fantasy points to opposing tight ends. Going back to the last 3 weeks before Denver, you're looking at Clive Walford, 650 and a touchdown. Fleener, 7, 109 and a touchdown. You have Greg Olsen, 676 and a touchdown. This, like, outside of the Broncos tight ends, they've allowed a double-digit fantasy scoring tight end in every single game. He hasn't been priced up to the Gronk level where Jimmy Graham even used to be, but he's a fantastic play this week.
All right, Brandon, I got some nice stats. I'm going to not tell the people who it is, but this guy's going up against a team that's allowing the league high 20.32 PPR points to tight ends. They're also allowing the most targets and yards and a touchdown per game to tight ends. Those all sound absolutely lovely. And then when you tell me that guy's Delaney Walker as well here, it's a match made in heaven against these hapless Browns here. I love the play, and he's reasonably priced. He hasn't had a really breakout game yet, so I'm going to be heavily invested in one Delaney Walker.
Yeah, they allowed over 100 yards to both Gronk and Pitta, and they've allowed 2 or more touchdowns to Reed and Bennett. I feel like at least 70-plus yards and a touchdown this week is very within the realm of possibilities.
Yeah, I absolutely love Mr. Delaney Walker this week. Mm-hmm. Your value play, Mike, I was a little concerned here. You got Gary Barnidge in here, not someone that's really on my radar. So explain to me, why should I have interest in Gary Barnidge?
Ever since Robert Griffin got hurt and they went to Josh McCown and Cody Kessler and even Terrell Pryor for that matter, Gary Barnidge is actually 5th in targets among tight ends. Every single week his usage is going up. I want to say it's in 3 straight games he's caught 5 passes. Going up against Tennessee, it's not a scary secondary. Tennessee is actually a lot better against running backs than you would think. The Browns are also, if I'm not mistaken, they're going to be missing one of their stud offensive linemen.
Yes, they are.
Yeah.
So I was going through that. So that's going to hurt Isaiah Crowell. Gary Barnidge is not kept into blocks, so don't think that he's going to be that. Gary Barnidge is treated as a wide receiver in Cleveland. And you've seen his usage every single week go up. So if you're looking for a value, someone you don't want to pay up for Jimmy Graham or Travis Kelce or, Delaney Walker, I think that he's a fantastic play. And another name I'd throw out in there, because we only have room for one value, is Richard Rodgers. I think he's a fine play too.
I like Dennis Pitta quite a bit, especially if Steve Smith is out. I think he might catch a little of those mid-tier passes against the Giants this week. So that's someone I'm heavily looking at. You've got Jesse James in here. He's no longer wanted on those Western posters anymore because he's on the field all the time. They found him. He's on the Steelers. He's running a lot of routes over the past couple of weeks too, over the first couple of weeks of the season, using him a lot as a blocker. Now he's getting those targets again. He's a big red zone target, and they're just going to demolish this Dolphins team. I feel bad for the Dolphins this week.
I just think that if you're going to get a value at tight end, you want a guy with touchdown upside. That's just the rule for me. And to me, he is second only to Martellus Bennett. He's tied for second with 3 touchdowns on the season right now out of all the tight ends. And you can say he's touchdown dependent, but okay. And moving on, he's not priced outlandishly. In fact, he's priced as the 16th highest on FanDuel, 20th highest on DraftKings. He's the perfect value. Now, does that mean it's boom or bust? I mean, maybe, I guess so. But, the guy's been on the field for 94% or more of the team snaps so far this season. So he's going to be there for the opportunities. I mean, I don't think there are any problems with Jesse James this week, other than if you think that all of those touchdowns go to Le'Veon Bell, which may be the case, or Le'Veon Bell gets some vultured by Jesse James, and we're all going to come back here crying. But I
like your pick, and you better hope it doesn't work out for you, because that's who you're going up against in our Dynasty League this week. Good old Jesse James is my tight end. So watch out there. Mike, your dud might break a couple of people's hearts here. You've got Zach Miller in here, and he's just been a target monster. He clearly has a connection with Brian Hoyer, but this Jaguars defense this season has really limited tight ends here. Tell the people why Zach Miller is on your dud list.
Yeah, no, tight ends, if there's any matchup that dictates, how I feel about tight ends or about a position, it's tight ends and the matchup that they're going into. And Zach Miller, yeah, he's been fine in the last couple of weeks with Brian Hoyer, but eventually those targets are going to start to shift towards Alshon Jeffrey. You cannot keep this kid on the side, on the field and not throw to him for so long. The Jaguars have yet to allow a tight end to top 42 yards receiving. And then on top of that, they've only allowed one touchdown, and that was to the magnet for touchdowns, and that was Antonio Gates. So I'm fading. I think the ownership's going to be high for Zach Miller, as it's been the last couple of weeks because of the connection with Hoyer, but there's a time to jump off, and for me, it's this week.
All right, you've got Thursday night tight ends here, Brandon. Antonio Gates, Hunter Henry. People wanted to use them a lot last week, but I'm in agreement here. Don't go chasing them. They're going to be splitting snaps. Gates might only be in there for 10 snaps. If they get into the red zone, maybe he gets a touchdown, but you can't really just play hoping for a touchdown this week. So
Yeah,
I'm avoiding the situation.
18 snaps for Antonio Gates, 43 for Hunter Henry. They do want him to get that record, though. It's very clear. So he will get touchdowns. Hunter Henry also scored a touchdown, but they're playing Oakland. Again, a bad defense. This is not the case today. I do also just want to say that Jordan Reed's concussion issues really terrify me. And I think that I'm just sad. So when we're talking about tight ends, I just wanted to say that, sometimes these health things, you just got to say it out loud because it's a game, but I'm worried.
Yeah, Jordan Reed and Tony Romo with the back. Like sometimes, guys, you gotta evaluate life. I know you want to play the game, but is it worth losing 15 years off your life? Probably not for a couple more $1 million. I know there's a lot.
Same, we're thinking about you. It sucks.
So that's gonna about wrap it up for this show, guys. Once again, all the premium stuff over at Pro Football Focus. You can get a subscription through them. You can add on the player grades. Those are great. You get visual descriptions of teams' offensive lines versus defensive lines and matchups. It's a great thing to add on to your subscription over at Pro Football Focus. If you're a big baller, for $249 a month, you get the premium statistics, which are absolutely amazing, and a whole bunch of fun stuff. So that's going to wrap it up for us here. And for Brandon and for Mike and for PFF, I'm Britt, and we out you.